You don't want to be known as soft. You don't want to be known as small. You don't want to be known as easy to push around. You know, this is a tough game, and there's a lot of tough guys, and these guys are warriors out on the ice.
Welcome to Between the Hash Marks from the Business of Hockey and the Goal podcast with Richard York and Les Kowalski. Let's start this episode.
Welcome to part 2, the continuation of last week's episode. Enjoy.
On July 1st, Gorton signed Zdeno Chara and Mark Savard as free agents. Do hockey fans know who those two people are? I think you do. Chara would obviously go on to win the Norris Trophy and be a staple on the defensive line of the Bruins for a long time. That was a contract that Gorton signed. He reassumed his assistant general manager duties when our best friend Peter Chiarelli was hired as permanent general manager. He was dismissed along with the respected scout, and Gorton was immediately picked up as a pro scout by the Rangers. He did a year as a pro scout, and then he did a couple years as president of player personnel, and then he was assistant general manager for 4 or 5 years, and then eventually the general manager of the New York Rangers. So this guy's got a hell of a history.
So you're saying that Gorton was actually fired by Chiarelli?
Yes, our best friend Peter Chiarelli.
You know what? Peter Chiarelli is just a walking disaster. He's like a human wrecking ball wherever he goes. Like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Well, certainly in that little 4 or 5 month stretch that he did with the Bruins, you can see the level of success the Bruins. He built them. In 5 months, he built the Bruins into a cup team.
Chiarelli must be a good salesman. I don't understand how he can be in these positions to be able to manage these teams the way he has and to be able to be carte blanche on it, just basically do whatever he wants to do with every team. Like if you look at what he did in Edmonton, he didn't want anybody communicating with him. He didn't want to have any input from anybody, right? That became very well known after he left Edmonton. He didn't have any communication skills. He didn't want anybody to know what he was doing. And the reason why he didn't want anybody to know what he was doing because he himself didn't know what he was doing.
The evidence is certainly in the pudding, isn't it? You know, it's not uncommon for even like as a coach, if a coach comes in, he likes to pick his own assistants. A general manager comes in, he likes to pick his own assistant general managers. But up to that point, Jeff Gorton had been there for 7 seasons as assistant general manager. And if you just looked at his history as interim GM for the Boston Bruins, I don't see what Peter Chiarelli saw that he didn't like. If you wanted to make a tough team, you drafted Milan Lucic, you signed Zdeno Chara. Like those are the foundations and the pillars of the tough team that Chiarelli rode the decisions of everyone else that set that team up.
I think Chiarelli has got some serious insecurities. If you think about it, if he can't be able to look at a team at the roster and accept it for what it is and wants to create his imprint, like you don't have to be changing the roster just for the sake of changing it, just to create your own imprint. You don't have to do that. And I think if you look at what Chiarelli has been doing and how he does it, he has to be able to change an entire roster just to make a point that it's his. But the thing is, the guy doesn't have any foresight. He doesn't understand the consequences behind the decision that he's making. And if you look at what he did in Edmonton, let alone what he was doing in Boston, I mean, I don't understand what is wrong with this guy.
Brian Burke was on a Sportsnet show there. They were asking him questions about when he was a general manager and the type of things that would happen behind closed doors. And Brian Burke mentioned that some general managers sign contracts or make moves with the notion that they're not going to be there in 5 years anyway, that it's somebody else's problem. So if they sign a player for 7 or 5 years at a big cap hit, where the tail end of that cap hit is going to be a big problem, he says that certain general managers out there had the mentality that that was somebody else's problem, that they needed to do something for tomorrow, and they don't care about 4 years from now because they may not be in a job anyway.
So what you're basically saying is that if you look at what Chiarelli has done, he just shows up to collect a paycheck. That's what you're saying. Because he doesn't have the long-term foresight in his planning process of what he wants to do. We go back to what was said in the very beginning of this podcast series. He was given the keys to the Ferrari and he crashed it and flipped it multiple times. So to me, what you just said, it seems that the only logical explanation why Peter Chiarelli is a walking disaster and a human wrecking ball is because he just shows up to collect a paycheck and he doesn't care what the end result of the franchise is, because he's going to look at whoever else comes in. They're just going to pick up the pieces and move forward with it. It's not his problem.
At this point in the series, I think it's pretty well determined that we will never get a chance to interview Mr. Peter Chiarelli and ask him these things directly, and that may be for the best. And you know what? On a human being level, I wish him the best of luck. He hasn't had a lot of success as a general manager in hockey, and he really sold himself on a certain identity that, looking into Jeff Gordon's history, was an identity that Peter Chiarelli didn't necessarily build himself, that he acquired a team that somebody else drafted and signed that had pillars of an identity put in place for him. And then he kind of rode the curtails of that. Certainly didn't work in Edmonton, where he had to go and put his own pillars in place. He made a disaster out of the Edmonton Oilers. Looking back at Jeff Gordon and his history, and just by what he did in Boston there, he probably should have been general manager of a franchise sooner. He certainly could have cut his teeth elsewhere. He was born and raised in Massachusetts. He is a graduate of Bridgewater State University with a degree in physical education in '91, and he received his master's degree from Springfield College in sport management in 1993. And that was just after he started working with the Boston Bruins. He's been with the Rangers franchise for a while. It's been promised, I would imagine, that he would be the general manager of the Rangers when Glenn Sather was ready to step down. And when Jeff Gordon came into the picture, his goal, well, not his goal, but his responsibility was to try this again. The several years of mixed reviews and mixed results on the ice wasn't working anymore. He has a history just in the couple years, the 2 years that he's been at the 2 or 3 years he's been at the helm of the New York Rangers here. Just going over the trades that he has made, he has acquired a pile of draft picks. And he has gotten rid of the anchors on most of the team financially, whether it's riding it out until the contract expires or he's found buyers for contracts, whatever it takes, like Rick Nash. He got rid of Rick Nash, stuff like that. Unfortunately, there was a lot of damage done to the New York Rangers, but that's often the case when you pass the torch on, even to respected individuals like Ken Holland. He left a little bit of a disaster in Detroit when he went to Edmonton. It gives management a fresh start and a fresh look on things. So it was really good for the Rangers. I think those polls that you read off earlier are fairly accurate to how the fan base feels from what I've seen. And when you look at the product on the ice, it's fairly encouraging. So why don't we look at some of the things that Jeff Gordon has done? He has traded defenseman Brady Skeed for a first-round draft pick to the Carolina Hurricanes, traded for Vladislav Namstnikov for Nick Ebert and a fourth-round pick, which was a good trade. He has brought in Jacob Trouba from the Winnipeg Jets. I'm sure the fans would like to see a bit more out of Jacob Trouba. He's only been there for one season, though. He acquired Adam Fox, who was a hotshot Calgary Flames draft pick out of the NCAA. He's a defenseman who made mention that he wanted to play for the Rangers and wouldn't be signing with Calgary. So Calgary traded him away to Carolina. Carolina Hurricanes were unable to sign him because he told them the same thing, that he wanted to play for the New York Rangers. So the Carolina Hurricanes were kind of forced to try and get some value out of him, and they traded him to the New York Rangers, which he signed for, and he has had an amazing first season. They traded away Kevin Hayes. Brendan Lemieux's bit of a disappointment. He's a good bottom six forward if you want to keep him around for that, but they got a good couple of draft picks. They got a first and a fourth. They traded away Matt Zuccarello, who was one of the fan favorites, but it made sense too. They got a couple of draft picks for him. Another big trade that he made was with Edmonton. He actually traded Ryan Spooner for Ryan Strome. And Ryan Strome has turned out really well for the Rangers, actually, and he's become their second line center. He had a couple of big trades with the Lightning. He traded away Captain Ryan McDonough and JT Miller. But this was all part of his rebuilding process, is that he was getting rid of the old regime to bring in a new regime. And he fully understands that players need to be brought up and drafted in their own cities. And it creates a lot of hometown emphasis and a lot of hometown motivation. And that's something that Glenn Sather didn't do. As we talked about, he had an open checkbook. And the way he would do is he would just find an all-star player and he'd drag him in, and he'd drag him into the fold. So when you look at the way the New York Rangers are set up now, they have Panarin, who's obviously a stud right now. They have Zibanejad, they have Strome, D'Angelo. Chris Kreider just signed a new contract. Even the polls were asking the fans, I think you said, right, that they were asking how much he was worth and if he was worth the contract that he signed. Jacob Trouba, Henrik Lundqvist. While we get into Henrik Lundqvist, that seems to be a bit of a sore spot with a lot of the New York Ranger fan base and former players, that there was recently a report brought out from Matt Zuccarello that Henrik Lundqvist was being treated unfairly as basically the poster boy for the New York Rangers, that he was being given the hard games to basically set him up for failure, while the kids were given the easy games. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. I got a question. The question I have for you is, as a general manager, what the New York Rangers are doing right now with Henrik Lundqvist is that they're giving him the more difficult teams, the more difficult assignments, and they don't have an established backup yet. They don't have an established replacement yet. They have a couple of hotshot kids, which have shown great potential, Alexander Georgiev and Igor Shesterkin. And both of them have performed well. Both of them look like they could be starters, but we don't know for sure if they're starters. Does the strategy that Jeff Gorton is taking disrespectful or smart? What he's doing is he's giving the hard teams, the hard assignments to the veteran and the easy assignments to the kids. So looking at it from one angle, he's assessing. He's assessing the future. From the other angle, from the fans' point of view or from the teammates' point of view, he is shafting Lundqvist.
You have to look at it from what assets you have available and what are the resources available within that asset base and what the skills are. I think that it's actually a very shrewd thing to do. You know that if you don't put a veteran into the hard game and you don't put that experience in, they're going to fail and that game is going to be lost. And so from a business perspective, even though it may be hard to do those hard games, I think that you have to be very secure in your own thought process, what the value is of each of the players and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Everything is based on performance. And so you need to determine where does that performance excel and where does that performance fall apart. You can bring these young hotshot players through the game, but you have to be very strategic in it. I think it's actually a very shrewd thing for him to do what he's doing. It's unfortunate that Lundqvist has to play hard games. You're a resource within a pool of assets and resources that you're drawn from. You just have to step up and be able to pull your weight. I don't think that there's anything personal about it.
Fans will take it personally because he's a fan favorite, Henrik Lundqvist. So really what the situation boils down to, looking at it from a general manager's point of view, is the Rangers have had a good amount of success this year, that they've had some young players definitely step up and fill some holes, especially on defense. And they've signed some good players like Panarin who've come in and performed like he was paid to perform, and he's done well. And the team overall is ahead of schedule. Your polls showed that earlier on, that when you spoke about where the fan base feels everybody is at as far as the rebuild goes. And it is. From a fan's point of view, they're seeing a certain level of success. They want to see Henrik Lundqvist succeed too, because he was there for some certain dark ages, and players who have played with Henrik Lundqvist, who have become teammates and friends with him, want to see him succeed too. So putting him in hard games does not put him in a position to succeed. When you look at it from a general manager's point of view, you have to think long term. Lundqvist is 38 years old. I'm sure he has a great relationship with the general manager. He was asked a couple years ago if he wanted to stick around or if he wanted to be traded. And they did that as a personal favor. They asked him, where do you see yourself on this team? Part of what made Henrik Lundqvist the pillar in the fan base that he is now is that he told management he wanted to stay. He wanted to be part of a rebuild. Is that as much as he wanted a cup and as much as he wanted to succeed, he loved New York, he loved the Rangers, and he wanted to stick it out through the rebuild. He showed that incredible humility to the fan base, and they love him for it. And that's why they love him. So they want to see him succeed, but management isn't putting him in a position to succeed. Management is putting him in a position to do some heavy lifting before his replacement comes to take over. because I think management understands that they're not going to win the cup this year, in a position to win it next year either. Next year, he's got a couple of bad contracts on defense coming off. That's going to open up a bit of cap space for him. However, they're riding right up near the cap as it is, and they have some important pieces to sign for next year. Ryan Strome, his contract is up. D'Angelo's contract is up, and they're both going to... Ryan Strome might sign for a parallel contract, a 1 or 2 year, prove that he can repeat the success. D'Angelo might sign for a bit more, but there's no room to sign these guys. And you have Lundqvist sitting there with an $8.5 million cap hit. I don't want to say it, Rangers fans, but if management wanted to be hardcore and really shrewd, is that they would find a way to eliminate that number off of their books so that it could sign these future players for the team. Now, there's no doubt Henrik Lundqvist will always be recognized as a New York Rangers goaltender. He doesn't matter where he plays. He'll be like a Tom Brady or a Wayne Gretzky. They'll be recognized for the franchises they played for and the franchises they won the cups for. And when you think of Wayne Gretzky, you don't think that he played his last game as a New York Ranger. Ranger fans will recognize that. The greatest hockey player in NHL history finished his career with the Rangers, but he's going to be most well known for his 200-point seasons and the 4 or 5 cups he won.
Well, in this Athletic article that I talked about before, there's one stat I never mentioned. It asked the question, how should the Rangers handle their 3 goalie situation? 49.3% said keep both goalies and buy out Henrik Lundqvist.
Ooh, shrewd, because they have the 2 young goaltenders that they're cycling through have shown promise, and it's hard to get rid of one thinking that could have been your starter. People and fans know, and even management knows, that Henrik Lundqvist is not the future in net. He's 38 years old. I think he has 1 year left on his contract. It's going to be a tough decision to make. He is not their future, but they also don't want to trade either one of those young guys because one of those young guys could be the future. So the fans are certainly educated and they know. So as much as they love Lundqvist, they see the future too. So certainly there's a lot of drama with the goaltender situation in New York, which I think you Ranger fans should be pretty excited because Jeff Gorton has done a marvelous job there. And he's certainly thinking long term. He's got himself some good young goalies that he's going to have to test and feel out. And he's committed to a process, and the process is working. He's eliminated a lot of bad contracts. He has a couple more that he has to eyeball in the next year or two. There's going to need to be some rebuilding on the defense with Mark Stahl and Brendan Smith, and certainly some secondary scoring that has to be addressed for the Rangers, that they're a bit top heavy. But you have a lot of young guys coming in. You have Kakko, who was drafted. He's a hot shot finish forward. So you have lots and lots of draft picks. He has certainly built that franchise and spun it around real quick, surprisingly quick. And I think other franchises are going to note the process. Certainly a huge level of buy-in from the young players, from the old players. There's only 4 players on the New York Rangers now that are over 30 years old. The rest of the team is still in their 20s, which is good, and that's good for a sustainable success. So when we look at the success of the New York franchise, I think it's a lot more, as the theory that I stated earlier, has a lot more to do with the loyalty of the fan base towards the city of New York, as much as it is the loyalty to the Rangers in general. And you look at the Rangers and they've done a quick turnaround. I think everybody was predicting a couple of more years of dark ages, and it hasn't been that at all. And I think you guys are doing a lot of successful things over there. I know they've upgraded their analytics department right from the presidential level down with Jonathan Davison coming in. And you guys got yourself a new general manager who has a ton of experience as an assistant general manager, as well as dealing with player development. I think he's working wonders there. There's a few more stones and a few more hurdles that he has to get across as far as a couple of bad contracts. But certainly if you look at a couple years ago, it's hard to believe that he has come this far this quickly. It should have been a lot harder for them than it was. And he had an amazing game plan, and he found a few buyers to help him out. He's turned that franchise around very quickly. It's been surprising and it's been entertaining to watch.
Well, this has been a good episode with the Rangers. So is there anything else that you need to add to it?
Well, certainly we're not done with the New York Rangers and the New York Rangers area. We are going to start dipping into ownership groups and the analytical departments and Madison Square Garden that they play out of. A lot more there to discuss, which could be certainly aiding to their quick turnaround and their quick adoption of processing and analytics. And it's fun to watch. And it's hard not to think that some of these processes could be reasons why it's been such a quick turnaround for them.
Been a really good episode with the Rangers. And when we put together the Syndicate format, we're definitely going to be getting deeper into the ownership groups in the New York area. If you don't have anything else to add, we'll wrap this up. We'll look at the Syndicate side with New York.
That sounds good. There's lots of bright future ahead for the Rangers, and commit to the process. And it's working. Don't try and get too excited too quick. A few more details to work out, but I think it's going well for you guys, and you need to embrace it and keep cheering your team on.
Well, thanks guys for listening. We'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. Talk to you later, guys.
Thanks for listening to Between the Hash Marks from the Business of Hockey and the Goal, produced by the Power Roadmap Podcast.